Welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology forecast for March 25th through the 29th. And this week is about differentiating between codependence, interdependence, and healthy relationship with the lunar eclipse in Libra. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a depth psychotherapist and astrologer, and I'm really excited to be able to share the astrology of this week with you from a psychological perspective. So the main event this week is we do have that lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. And so, like most things in astrology, this eclipse has a point of exactness that ripples out forward and backward in time. And so we talked a bit about this eclipse last week in last week's video. And I know that a lot of us have been sort of anticipating and looking forward to eclipse season, this eclipse, and then we'll have another eclipse in Aries in April, on April 8th. And so that is to say, my point in saying that is that we've been feeling into this energy already. So there's already been this sort of feeling into this, and we're going to explore it a little bit more. And then it also moves forward in time. And I think that with eclipses, we can think of them as a season of about a month or so, especially particularly from new moon to new moon. And then also while the sun is in the sign of Aries. Oh yes, okay, so this particular lunar eclipse in Libra is exact on Monday the 25th at midnight Pacific time. And it's exact at 5 degrees of Libra, so fairly early in the sign. And so this is the point of exactness where there may be like this heightened effect or this heightened experience, especially because we're talking about a full moon where the moon is big and bright. The full moon itself is a point of culmination and an apex and like a maximum expression or a maximum capacity, maximum being able to see with the light. Now, in this case, of course, it's sort of a paradox because the light is briefly being sort of subtly blocked out. So we're having a light, but then there's sort of this like the light goes away and then comes back. And I think of eclipses as sort of like a symbolic reset button. It has that kind of feeling tone to it where you to use a more electronic sort of analogy, it's like something isn't quite working or there's a bug or something weird, you're not sure what's going on, so you unplug it, plug it back in, or turn it off, turn it back on. Now with this eclipse though, it is what's called a penumbral eclipse, and this is just a fancy way of saying that so with the lunar eclipse, the shadow of the Earth blocks out the light of the moon. And in this case, it's not what we would call a full eclipse. It's not like the light of the moon actually gets blocked out. It's more like there's this shadow over the moon. And so for those of us that can see the eclipse where it's visible, it's not even like there's this little chunk that we can see or like a clear distinct line of the shadow. It's more of the moon looking more dim for us for a couple, I think like maybe an hour or so. So this is important because it's a very subtle and soft sort of eclipse. It's not as dramatic where there's like this the light being blocked out in a more explicit or clear sort of way. It's sort of like a softening. And I think that we can take this to mean that this eclipse, the effects of it are a bit softer. Things are a bit more subdued as far as some of the symbolism, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. And In short, whenever we have an eclipse, there is sort of, or eclipse season, there is this opening of possibilities. We can think of eclipses as opening portals to other worlds, to other possibilities, where things can change very rapidly because there is this opening of potential, opening of possibility. And what else did I want to say about this? Oh yeah, okay, so this particular eclipse, it's visible in the Americas, North America, South America, East Australia, and West Africa. It's most visible if you're in America through like the Midwest, essentially. And so, of course, modify this for your time zone, but you can visibly view it. But it's, again, just going to be that the moon is more of a faint, the light is more faint. And so we're always thinking of this symbolically, right? So the light is a symbol of conscious awareness. The light in a lot of cultures is the light of the moon is a symbol of growth and physical development, things actually happening in this material realm. And so there's something here where there's a culmination, but then there's a bit of something being sort of changed or transformed, or something doesn't quite happen in the way that we think it will be. And this is around the themes of Libra. So Libra, so it's not just Libra, it's also the south node there in Libra as well, because this is a south node eclipse. The moon is if we look at the chart, the moon is closest to the south node. It's opposite the north node. And so the themes with this are the south node is around themes of letting go, surrender, and sort of like loosening the grip on things. The South Node is also a symbol of things that tend to come in the birth chart. The South Node is a symbol of things that tend to be natural for us, that we have this innate gift or skill or capacity, or even just simply a comfort level with things. It can kind of be like the default setting that we fall into if there's no conscious effort. It's like, this is just easy and we know how to do these kinds of things. And this is very helpful because the South Node can tell us where our natural abilities and skills are, and where we have assets. Now, the South Node can also show where we tend to repeat things over and over again in sort of an excessive kind of way, where it's like it becomes worn, so to speak. And so we all get to experience this with this lunar eclipse in Libra, with the South Node in Libra. So this is around loosening our grip on themes of prioritizing the needs of others, or prioritizing relationships over our own wishes, desires, needs, over our own life. I think that this is also can be seen as a reminder to prioritize, or to look at the value of our skills and gifts around creating harmony or beauty or aesthetics, or diplomacy, like things that help bring people and situations together, even situations around social justice. It's like, okay, what are the inherent skills and gifts and capacities that we want to keep, that are life-giving, that are helpful? And then how can we do so in a way that that feels life-giving? And I think we can think of the inverse of that. Libra can be a symbol of not life-giving when there is a sense of prioritizing the needs of others, but also it's kind of more psychologically, it can be where, how do I want to say this? Where we feel responsible for other people in a way that is excessive. Like we feel responsible for the thoughts or feelings of other people. And so then we modify the way that we're approaching something in order to invoke a response from someone else. I think that is the essence of the term codependence. And I think that codependence is kind of a slippery term and often not used in a way that is helpful. Um, but the way that I think of codependence is where, um, if I am feeling responsible for your thoughts and feelings, and that I modify my behavior to take care of you in some way, to take care of your psychological experience. And of course, sometimes we need to do that. And things like this are a survival skill that we learn early in life. And then when we become adults, these things become outdated. And this is the essence of the South Node, is looking at something that maybe has served us for a particular time or a season or a developmental stage. And does it need to be um, released or transformed in some way? Okay, so yeah, so that's kind of the feeling tone, the vibe of this involving the South Node in Libra. Um, yeah, and then I also wanted to speak to this eclipse being opposite Chiron and Mercury. So Mercury is, so this is Chiron and Mercury in Aries, opposite the Moon and South Node in Libra. So whenever we have oppositions, there's kind of this feeling of um, having to choose, or one thing or the other. It's polarity. Um, and the thing is that there is a unification in finding the common ground here. And I think when we're talking about the axis of Aries and Libra, we're really talking about relationship. We're talking about relationship to others. We're talking about relationship to ourselves, and how it is that we can be ourselves in relationship, and how to navigate sort of that space in between, that like, this is where I am, this is where you are, and then how do we come together in a way that is life inducing and life giving for both folks, or both sides of this situation. And I'm just thinking too, in my psychotherapy practice, this is a thing. This comes up a lot, where it's like, how do we navigate um, relationships in a way that we're not going too far in one direction? That we want to really be connected to people, but we also want to be connected to ourselves as well, and that this space in the in between is kind of this ongoing, um, very nuanced situation of figuring out. And I think that's a key to Libra, is that Libra is about balance, and that balance is not an endpoint that we reach and then stay there. It is this constant refining and constant reflection. And that, learning how to be in relationships, I think, is a lifelong practice. Um, so I digress. Yes. Okay. So this axis of Aries Libra is about the self, Aries, and relationship, Libra, and then how can we navigate this space in between to bridge the polarity. And in this case, we're talking about, of course, the moon, which is the emotional experience, the intuitive experience, the personal unconscious, the subjective experiences, your subjective lens through which you see the world based on your early upbringing experiences. Especially the moon is very connected to our early attachment figures, the folks who raised us, the folks who, through our upbringing, taught us how relationships work, and how how to be in relationship, what is safe versus unsafe, and how we need to be in order to stay connected to people. This is all um, symbolism that's connected to the moon. And so we have that piece, right? That's very personal. It's very emotional. It's very subjective. And so this is why, especially during a full moon, subjective emotional things can come up because the moon is bright. There's more to see there. And the moon is opposite Mercury, which is a symbol of the mind, our logical thought process, and also how we communicate, how we think, how we communicate with others, but also um, how we communicate psychically, or how we have an experience of communicating with something greater than ourselves, whether that is the divine or your spiritual guidance team, or uh, you know, your faith or spirituality, etc. Mercury um, is the bridge between us and whatever that greater um, thing or situation that we're communicating with. Um, and Chiron is uh, is an asteroid that is often known as the wounded healer. Uh, if you've heard me talk about Chiron before, if you've had a session with me or worked with me, you know that maybe I am not a super big fan of that term, the wounded healer. I think that it is not very empowering in the way that sometimes it's portrayed to be, but that's a whole other talk. so Chiron is a symbol of our capacity for healing. And it's also because in the myth of Chiron, Chiron was a centaur who sacrificed himself, sacrificed his whole life for someone else. And he was a healer, he was an astrologer, he was a physician. And when we see Chiron configured in the chart, we know that there are themes around healing, being a healer, being a person that is, maybe a seer, or something involving like divination, or talking with the unseen energy. And there is also something here with Chiron around sacrificing oneself for another person, sacrificing your vitality, your life force for someone else. And I think that when we're talking about healing, there's often an element of sacrifice. When we're talking about living, there's an element of sacrifice. And with this particular moment in time, with this eclipse, I think that it's asking us to look at where there may be ways in which you maybe sacrifice your vitality or your essence or yourself in service of others. And this is a choice, and then it's a choice, and it can be very fulfilling if it's done intentionally, and if it's done in sort of a healthy dosage, so to speak. And if this is something that we've learned to do unconsciously, then that's when, we're talking about the South Node in Libra, where it starts to fall into a pattern, a way of being that is not life-giving. And so yeah, so these are kind of like, questions, especially around Chiron and Mercury, is, how is it that you maybe sacrifice yourself or deny your ideas in service of others and prioritizing others? And of course, sometimes you're in a setting where this is kind of the system that you're in. And so it's not always something that is coming from you. A lot of times it is systemic. I think another thing to think about too is what information, Mercury being information, what information are you not seeing, or are you avoiding because it's painful? And this is something that I see too, is, you know, where is there a truth? Where is there an objective idea, Mercury? But that we don't want to see it because it would be too painful and because we would need to face something inside of ourselves. I think this is also involving this situation. And then, yeah, I think there's this theme, this idea around codependence versus interdependence, because when we talk about not wanting to be codependent, not wanting to take on responsibility for other people's experiences, this does not mean cutting ourselves off or not having empathy or not offering a part of ourselves to someone else. Um, we want to ideally, I think, in this moment with this energy, we want to move into interdependence where there is a reciprocity, and that we know that we are the stewards of our own ship, that we are responsible for our feelings, and that uh, other people are responsible for their own inner experience. That, like, yes, of course, we can have an impact on others, and that this is the nature of relationship, that we impact each other very deeply at times, and that we are not fully responsible for someone else's uh, emotions, thoughts, behaviors, etc. And so I think that's the theme here, especially with Chiron, is moving into the healing of interdependence and um, seeking that out, seeking out reciprocity. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to pull a couple of tarot cards here, and then I have some additional themes and questions that I was thinking about when I was looking at this astrology. So let's see, did I miss any of these? So yeah, we talked about identifying yourself versus others and that space in between. I think there's a strong theme here, of course. I've kind of danced around this, but definitely around healing relational dynamics, and that um, often we need to see the hard stuff before we can actually change it. So I think that if something comes up that feels challenging, or where you're like, I don't like the way that that's going, that's actually good, because then once you've become conscious of something, then that's when it can transform. And so just because something is not working in the way that like where you're like, I'm doing that thing again, that's great. That means that you're a human and that you have become conscious of a pattern, and now that can alchemically change naturally because there is a new awareness of it. Let's see. Yeah, I think there's also a theme here on becoming aware of how you maybe bypass your intuitive sense in service of what should be done. So, like, well, I don't really want to, like, I have this feeling, but it's not a convenient feeling. Um, I think this happens to all of us. Again, one of those like lifelong uh, practices in listening to ourselves. Other questions to go deeper into this are to look at what's happening in your life now in relation to these things. So as I've been talking about this, what in your life comes to mind? What is happening now that relates to this? Also looking at the symbolism in your birth chart of the houses that are on the Libra, the Aries Libra axis. What do those houses symbolize? That's going to tell us a little bit more about your personal experience of this week, of this eclipse. And then also, I think this is really important, and I find that I find in my when I'm doing readings for folks or in my psychotherapy practice, that often we can get so focused on like the big thing right now, like for in this case the eclipse, that we forget about the other long-term phase transits that are happening, like maybe a transit of Saturn or Uranus, and that the eclipse is happening within that broader context. And so I think to also, if you're following your birth chart and your transits, to keep in mind that you're within a broader phase rather than just, hyper focusing on this one particular point, that this is happening in the context of maybe a Saturn transit or a Neptune transit or Uranus, etc. Okay. So pulling 3 cards for you. So the first card is the 6 of Pentacles. And the 6 of Pentacles is about victory, really. Victory in finances, and that happens through being generous and through receiving, through giving and receiving. So funny, actually, this card feels very appropriate to what we've been exploring for this week. So this is about being generous with what it is that you have to give, but then also receiving when someone is trying to be generous with you, and that it's like there's this both and. I always think too of the 6s in tarot as connected with early childhood patterning kind of experiences. They feel very reminiscent of bringing some healing now based on looking at maybe the past, or like, what got you to the point that you are here, and that there's sort of this young part that that's still active here, and that we all have these young parts that are informing the now, the adult life. So reciprocity here is a theme, and I wonder for you, what is being asked of you now? Are you being asked to share more? Are you being asked to receive more? Maybe a little bit of both. And then the 4 of Wands here. So the 4 of Wands is about celebration. It's about coming together. It is sort of like this bonding or marriage of things. So 4 also psychologically is often correlated to the self, the soul, the core of the person, that is the integrated psyche. And so there's something here around unifying. I'm like really drawn to the center point, where there's like in the middle, there is this blue with a black circle, and it's making me think of the eclipses. So 4 of Wands is a very beautiful, encouraging benefit card. Both of these are actually 6 of Pentacles and also the 4 of Wands. So there's something here that's coming together. And it's a celebration. It's a celebratory effect. And then the last card is the Father of Wands. It's also in the traditional system, it is the King of Wands. And so this is a card about leadership, strong presence, and leadership through being an example. That you living your life is inspiring to other people, that you living your life has an impact. It's not that people are thinking of what Maya Angelou said. It's very popular quote of hers that said something like, people, they won't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I'm like very much paraphrasing that, but something like that. So that's the essence of this card. Is it's not that you're being a leader or impactful or influential via the actual info or the things even that you're doing. It's more like your presence, and that people see you and they see possibility here. I think this can also just be a feeling too for you, like an inner sense of empowerment and vibrancy. The wands for me are very connected to personal power, vitality, vibrancy, etc. So when I'm looking at all of these together, there is something here around reciprocity, around even like receiving or giving gifts, and sort of something just spontaneously falling into your lap, and to like trust this, and to ask, to give, to receive, etc. And then there's something in that that has an effect of cohesiveness, coming together, integration, um or is like really about like thinking even about the four legs of a table being more stable, and that through this, like the giving, receiving, and then there's sort of this integration, and then this leads to a sense of vitality and empowerment. I'm also thinking in this with the Father of Wands in this deck, the figure is of a snake, and the snake is connected often as a symbol in Indian um mythology of the what's called the kundalini, or the base of power that is coiled at the sacrum, and that it's sort of this potential of power that can be released or invoked through spiritual practices. And so um taking this psychologically, once things are like integrated and there's kind of a sense of coming together, that is when more energy can arise naturally. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful for you. Again, my name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a depth psychotherapist and astrologer. And if you want to find out more about me and my work, you can find that on my website, theastropsyche.com. I am wishing you a super wonderful week. I hope that things are easy and that things really just flow into line, into place for you this week. I'll see you soon. Bye.